And with that, I think we are about to be joined by our final witness who's signed up for tonight, and that will be Greg Garrett. Greg, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Oyer. My name is Greg Garrett. I live in Providence. I'll just quickly mention the plastic issues. I think all of the plastic bills are good. We need to pass all of them. Listening to the lobbyists from the plastic industry, I tend to think that we are hearing the buggy whip makers of 100 years ago, and the car industries and the oil industries, they weren't given no mind to the buggy whip makers. And it's time to move on from them. It's time to move on from plastics and fossil fuels. The one I'm here to mostly talk about is the compost bill. I believe it's 104, but my numbers aren't in front of me right now. I have been working on compost industries in the industry for 12 years in Rhode Island. We started the compost initiative back in 2008, 2009. The state legislature passed new legislation. We got new regulations. And from an industry that had one business in it, there's now about 15 compost businesses in the state. And part of that is because we made it mandatory for bigger businesses, bigger institutions, to compost their food scrap. Expanding that to all the schools would be a great thing. The kids are ready to do this. Friends of mine have been doing audits in schools and teaching kids schools about compost, and the schools are ready. They can do this. Saves space in the landfill, saves greenhouse gas emissions. It also, we have this agricultural renaissance in Rhode Island, and we need the compost. So that's all really important. I also saw a provision in the bill, which, in addition to the schools, seemed like it made it it stepped down the size of a business that had to compost from 100 tons a year to 30. I'm not sure if I read it right, but if that is true, I strongly support that. The fact that we have 12 or 15 businesses now collecting and composting, bringing that number down will massively increase the amount of compostables taken out of the landfill, increase the amount of compost available for farmers and gardeners, and move us in a direction that, coming down the road, eventually all the people of Rhode Island are going to be able to compost their food scrap, either at home, in a neighborhood depot. There's some great neighborhood depots popping up, and there will be collections in some places by municipal or private haulers that are coming. So anything we can do to increase the amount of food scrap taken out of the landfill and out of the waste stream, and get it into compost, or feeding animals is good. If you can't compost it, but you can anaerobically digest it, that's still way better than it was before. So anything we can do to expand that, and which will help expand the compost industry and help everybody. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate your testimony. And does anyone have any questions for this witness?
Yeah, I have one question for him.
Go ahead, Chair Miller.
Great, Greg. I experienced something with a community group that had been very careful in trying to get mulch for a project that they had that was presented to them as organic, and then when it showed up, it showed a lot of plastic components to it, like ground up plastic in it.
Yep.
Do you know anything
I've heard about those things.
That too? No.
I mean, there are some fly-by-night operations, and they're not really doing control. But the fact that there's so much plastic in the compost says there's so much plastic in the environment. So we have an issue of if we eliminate the plastics in the environment, will help the composters. But also there are some composters, and plastic is hard to get out of compost. It is. But there are a lot of composters that will reject loads that have plastic in it and not take it. Of course, then it ends up in the landfill, where we don't really want it either. But we need quality controls for sure. And there are some machines designed to remove the plastic from before as at the first stage of composting, but I don't think any of them are ever going to be 100% effective, and microplastics will get in. So the only way to really eliminate plastic is to eliminate plastic in the environment, but good quality control helps too.
Yeah, and I want to take this opportunity just not to comment to Greg directly, but to the committee and those who might be new to the committee or need a little history lesson on the issue of plastic bags and other legislation around plastic waste. I was the Senate representative for the governor's task force around this issue, and the idea of stitch handles, and I know Senator Coyne is very familiar with it because there were several very important advocates from Barrington because they were one of the early municipal ordinances around this issue. And the stitch handle thing was a very contentious issue because the governor had framed a committee or a task force that didn't only have environmental advocates on it, but had plastic bag manufacturers, bottled, the soda industry, so plastic bottles were included, those who distributed plastic bags were included, or manufactured plastic bags, both. The chemical industry was part of it. So there wasn't an easy or immediate resolution around stitched handles. And it was resolved. And before it was resolved, as many of you might remember, I had my own bill which started off with stitched handles. But as it got resolved, there was no need to have two different pieces of legislation around the same issue. But also, as you see, separate bills around straws, balloons, plastic bottles, recycling bottles, styrofoam. These are all issues that were heavily discussed in the governor's task force, but were difficult to resolve because of the makeup of the committee. And so to think that the environmental community wasn't united on having all those other components in it is not accurate to the work that was done. The environmental community and the municipalities that had already passed bills that had stitched handles language were very much in consensus that not only was the stitched handle language very, very, very important if you're going to have a statewide piece of legislation, but most of the environmental community also saw it important to have straws, balloons, language around plastic bottles, potentially deposits as an issue, and of course stitched handles and styrofoam. And so just to warn you guys, I do have legislation, and other legislators have legislation on both the House and the Senate around styrofoam bans and plastic bottles, especially the smaller plastic bottles called nips, which if any of you have been part of a cleanup, it's a pervasive and difficult component of that we see in any cleanup, and is a real issue. So just to give you all fair warning and a little history, if you haven't been in this committee and heard these types of bills before.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any other questions for the witness?
So then, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm sure then Senator Miller will see those two guys with the plastic cups. They brought the styrofoam cups, pleading for mercy on not to ban their styrofoam cups and why. I'm sure we'll see them again. I just want to thank Greg Garrett. He's extremely educated, a master's degree, spends his entire life living his talk. He's as green gets. If we had more guys like him, we'd probably already have a lot of these bills passed. So thanks for all you do, Greg.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Senator Archambault said about the guy holding up the styrofoam cup. Historically, that's been somebody from Dunkin' Donuts, who is now in the middle of a 2-year phase out. I think it was about a year ago they announced that. So at least we've lost one person holding up that styrofoam cup. Please don't ban it because they're phasing it out themselves. So.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for this witness? And I did misspeak. We do have actually one final witness. And thank you, Greg, for your testimony.
Thank you for the committee.